Hey everybody, I'm back. It's been a week since I posted the first shelf reading video where I went through a long box of comics. So if you haven't seen that one, you may want to go back. I'm basically going through all of my long boxes of comics. There's four plus a few short boxes. And then I don't know, maybe I'll start going through the bookshelves up there. A shelf reading is a term from uh, librarians where you basically just go through a shelf book by book, and go through a card catalog if you have one, card by card, to make sure that everything lines up and is correct and should is where it should be. And it's a way of doing inventory, I suppose, checking over everything, making sure that you don't need to repair or recycle something that's been there for a while and isn't being borrowed, isn't being used. I basically went through that exercise recently, and so what you're seeing now is what I chose to keep, which I figure is a bit more interesting than just going through and saying, nah, get rid of this. Okay, so the first video and basically went through, uh, they're sorted by title alphabetically. And I got through A through, I started with G. I was stopped at GI Combat. And that's where we pick up again. Some more issues of GI Combat. Some of them are rather old. Got some that were 20 cents, some that are 12 cents. Here's one that was 10 cents, and this is actually probably one of the more um, incidentally valuable things in the collection, I guess. If you look close, it's signed by Russ Heath, who I assume was the cover artist on this issue number 80 of GI Combat. Anyway, so that's the end of GI Combat. Now, next up, I kind of. Oh, well, actually, these do start with G. I took a few smaller comics from one of my favorite artists, John Allison, and excuse me, I'm just going to find a place to put these. There we go. And I kind of stuck them in this long box along with his uh, long-lived series Giant Days, which is what I'll show you next. But first, here's the kind of random smaller comics and other things of his that I have in there. One is an old Scary Go Round collection, Girl Spy. So that's very old stuff there. Next is another Scary Go Round collection called Ghosts. And that's, as you can see, the more contemporary style, not the kind of vector art. And then I have this zine called Drive Past My House, which is related to a band called Summer Camp in the UK. And they got some, I assume, all British artists to make some art for the release. And a one shot here. Well, it's not a one shot, it's an issue of Power Pack that he contributed to. And I'm sure I've got some other John Allison stuff kicking around in the boxes here that we'll be seeing. But the biggest by far is Giant Days, which is kind of a spin off of Scary Go Round, starring a couple of the characters that basically got old enough to go to college, and this is their college experience. I actually don't have, funny enough, I don't have copies of issue 1 and 2. I kind of jumped on or realized it was happening a bit late. So I got, instead, this, they went back. I think they must have sold out the first few printings, and they went back to print this combo issue of the first two. So that's what I have. And then a whole bunch more of single issues, holiday specials, a whole bunch of Giant Days. It's a really great series. Very funny. I wish that my college experience had been half as fun. And there's the rest of Giant Days. There's including a special that I think is relatively recent, just kind of catching up with the characters. And Allison has a new webcomic launching soon, I believe. I'll check in on that. Next up, we have a weird comic called Go Go, Volume 1, Number 9, October 1967, a Charlton publication. Very... Oh, I can almost make out credits there for artist credits. Don't recognize them though. Rock. Wilkes and Rock. No. Art's not too bad. The lettering is that kind of EC style text. Yeah, kind of racist depictions of stuff going on. Oh, you know what? I'll bet I kept this because of this story with art by Jim Aparo for a character called Bikini Love. Wow. And it's set at the Charlton offices, so it's like a weird fourth wall breaking thing. And Dick Giordano wrote, I guess he was the editor on this. Here we have a comic making fun of the Beatles and the Monkees and that sort of group back in the day, I guess. Crazy art. Okay. Next up, we have... Oh, speaking of more John Allison, here's a one-shot, the first issue of a comic called Golden Rage, which I kept for the Tula Lotte cover. Normally I keep these together. That must have just gotten accidentally sorted into that. So I'll put that where it belongs. And then next up we have two 4-issue miniseries of one of John Allison's spin-offs called The Great British Bump-Off. And this is a spin-off of the... He had a group of mystery-solving teens whose name escapes me at the moment. And that has evolved into a couple of other series, including one called Solver. And this one obviously is themed around a baking competition show. It's very funny. Very cute. Like everything Allison does. And Max Sarin, again, on art, the artist he collaborated with for much of Giant Days. So, next up, we're back to Weirdo DC Comics. We got a Green Lantern. Oh, I kept this one 179, August 1984, because it's by Len Wein with art by Dave Gibbons. So that's cool. In fact, there's a backup story in here written by Todd Klein, who also did the lettering, as you would, and Dave Gibbons' art again, so that's kind of cool. And, oh, well, here's a very special comic. Gil Kane, the great cartoonist, probably best known for his work on Green Lantern and some other stuff. He was a friend of a friend back in the 90s, a person that I knew in Appa Centauri was very close to him. He gave her away at her wedding. Um, and because she knew that I was, into comics and making comics, she very kindly reached out to some friends of hers who were in the business, and would occasionally send me stuff. And this was one of the things that she sent along. Thank you very much, Lee, if you happen to ever see this. Um, it's an issue of Green Lantern, number 75, signed to me by Gil Kane. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Kane is a huge influence on me artistically you know, before I had that faint connection to him. And it's very special to have that to remember him by. Um, my first memory of I'm sure I encountered Kane's art in the 70s when I was a kid growing up, but I really became aware of him in the 80s because of his run on the Micronauts, which was a book I was hugely into, and his own kind of resurgence at DC thanks to a miniseries called Sword of the Atom. The Atom was a popular figure for him as well in the Silver Age. Anyway, very cool. Green Lantern 75. And as it happens, I also have a copy of Green Lantern number 61, which I think I must have just snagged out of a box of beat up comics at some point. Uh, I'm always buying old horror comics, even if they're from publishers that are not my favorite. And I've mentioned Gold Key in the first video. Um, Gold Key and their kind of other imprint, Whitman Comics. So I've got a few issues here of Grimm's Ghost Stories, which are a Gold Key publication. But I actually do have a sentimental attachment to this issue, which, as you can see, is Shakespeare related. And it tells a story after a story about Merlin and a computer, and another story. Oh, drawn by George Russos. That's cool. Another story about witches. The Shakespeare one must be the last story. Yes, by the Bones of Shakespeare. And the art is by Garcia Lopez, which is extra cool. So, um, it's a story about how Shakespeare allegedly has a curse on his grave, and if you disturb his bones, horrible fate will be visited upon you. So, don't go digging up Shakespeare. You've been warned. I remember reading that as a kid and being like, shit, are people trying to do that? Anyway. Sometimes you just want to pick up a comic book and have a whole bunch of absolutely stupid fun. And I can't think of a book that fulfills that promise better than Sergio Aragonés and Mark Evaniers' Gru the Wanderer. And I mean, it doesn't matter what issue you have, just pick up any issue, dive in, almost any page. It's just sheer swords and sorcery, mayhem, and nonsense. With a dog who is somehow even stupider than Gru is. Or maybe they're about the same. Anyway, wonderful, wonderful book. It's just been... I don't know if it's still in production. I feel like it comes back every once in a while, maybe. It's not like it's a matter of, Gru has something new to say, but probably more a matter of, just Evanier and Aragonés having the time. I assume they're both pretty much retired now, but anyway. Evanier has a great blog, by the way, News from Me, M.E. Mark Evanier. I highly recommend it. Okay, getting into a couple of kind of local related comics. One is Halifax Explosion, number 1, only one, I think. I believe this is one of the ones that Strange Adventures helped to publish. Um, yeah, their office of publication is the old Strange Adventures location on Sackville Street. Sponsored by, looks like a moving company. Um, yeah, and this was basically capturing some work by their artists of the day, including Dave Howlett, Brad Matheson, Sean Jordan, Jay Silver. Some solid stuff in here. Stuff that I'm sure you would recognize. Cool. Halifax Explosion, #1. And this is a comic by an underground artist named Rand Holmes, Harold Head, and Hitler's Cocaine, the second issue of a two-part miniseries. Pretty snazzy art, really. I'd say fairly typical of underground comics. If you there's some nudity, so I'm going to be careful about what I show on camera. But you can definitely see some kind of Crumb and Gilbert Shelton influence in there. And you can see how it would influence some people since. Oh, nice. Big ad from Kitchen Sink Press, who's the publisher, long gone now. Big ad for Harvey Kurtzman's Goodman Beaver. Anyway, fun book. Rand Holmes was, I believe, from the Truro area, I want to say. Next up, we've got a whole bunch of Hawkeye. H is for Hawkeye. Okay. I have the first issue, looks like, of the 80s, 83 Marvel miniseries. That was kind of a spotlight on Hawkeye. It was very popular to do these 4 to 6 issue limited series at the time as Marvel kind of tested out. Well, maybe we don't have to publish a book for 8 months and then cancel it and look like a bunch of dicks. Maybe we could just tell a story and then end it. And I think Frank Miller's success over at DC with Ronin was making people in the industry go, huh, okay, maybe there's a way to get these creators' rights upstarts what they want while still making us a shitload of money. And so you see all these miniseries start to happen. You know, Frank Miller had another one for Wolverine, and Barry Windsor Smith had one for Machine Man, and there was one for Magic from the New Mutants. I don't know if that was Sinkovich or not. Anyway, it was a common thing. Now it's pretty much standard operating procedure. You get a creative team on a book for 6 months or a year, and you collect their stuff in trades, and you know it's just kind of understood that the arcs of a book are basically just ongoing, you know, miniseries after miniseries after miniseries now. And speaking of, here is one of them, the Kelly Thompson run on Hawkeye. Lovely book. Used a lot of this material, of course, for the Disney Plus series, thematically, not literally. They also used a fair bit of the back here up on the shelf. I don't know if you can see it. There's the Matt Fraction and David Aja run, which they also borrowed quite a bit from for the TV series. This run looks like it went for 16 issues. And there's a Kate Bishop one-shot as well. Highly recommend those. And then I have another miniseries um, from the Marvel Legacy. Yeah, there was an event that Marvel did a few years ago called Marvel Legacy, where they were, I don't even know what the point of it was, just bringing the old numbering back into how they reckoned. I don't know. Honestly, don't know. And part of it, I think, was bringing back old characters or teams or anyway. This was a Marvel Legacy branded run of Tales of Suspense, featuring Hawkeye and the Winter Soldier. So it was a mini series. Um, Here's a little educational comic called Health and Wealth, a graphic guide to the U.S. healthcare system. Oh dear. Um, Pretty cool. It seems to be using a lot of Richard Scarry artwork throughout, or somebody doing Richard Scarry style artwork. And it's created by the Center for Cartoon Studies. They've done a few books like this, so that's cool. Here's another comic that I will probably put up on the shelf, just because I'm putting all of Tom King's books together. Helen of Windhorn, which is another collaboration with Bill. Oh, I'm going to mispronounce this name. Bilquis Evely? Bilquis Evely? I'm so sorry. Lovely art. Love it. Um, Same artist from the Supergirl series that they're currently making a movie out of. And actually, I have not had a chance to finish that book, so I really need to do that. Next up, this was a mini series, I guess. I've only got one issue of it. Giant Robot Hellboy. What if Hellboy was a giant robot? Sells itself. Written by Mike Mignola, art by Duncan Fegredo, colors by Dave Stewart. Good stuff. Next up are the only two issues I have, I think, of Hellblazer, but boy, are they good issues. Illustrated by David Lloyd. Basically, what if John Constantine was the guy in The Wicker Man? Creepy. Very creepy. And illustrated by David Lloyd from V for Vendetta. It packs an extra punch. Okay, next up we have a bunch of issues, well, a few issues, of Fleischer and Teixeira's Hex. In fact, it looks like I have the first three issues, which is nice. And then issue 5, 11, and 12. I didn't realize I had such early issues. Hex, of course, is the crazy science fiction sequel to the classic DC Western title, Jonah Hex, which they made into a movie starring Josh Brolin that everyone has forgotten about. Maybe it's better that way. What do we got next here? The Case of the Perilous Pet is an issue of House of Mystery. Number 115, 1961, doesn't have a cover. I do tend to collect the DC anthology horror titles, so House of Secrets, House of Mystery, Unexpected, Ghosts, especially the older ones, if only because it's probably going to have some artists that, like Garcia Lopez or whoever, just kind of doing some work before they get put onto regular books. I should probably mention, because I don't think I've mentioned yet, that I have kind of a rule of thumb for keeping books. If I don't have any particular attachment to an issue, like, a signature or something, these days I kind of just have a cover price cutoff point. So if it's over 25 cents, I'll probably add it to the get rid of pile, or I'll at least review it. If it's older than that, then I'll probably keep it just by default. But it depends. That's just kind of my vague rule of thumb these days, which is why you'll tend to see random comics like this that are super old. House of Mystery 135, for example, 12-cent cover price. House of Mystery 203, 25 cents, but it's a giant, which means they're theoretically, that looks like a Russ Heath cover again. Ooh, Bernie Wright's an art inside. That's why I buy these books, man. And then we got some more House of Mysteries that are a little more contemporary. Here's one from 1980. And that's the newest one that I have. Then we get into the House of Secrets, going back a little bit, number 125. Ooh, some Gray Morrow art on the next one. E. Nelson Bridwell wrote this one. I also tend to keep these older books because of the crazy ads. I'm always scanning and archiving comic book ads, especially ones that are in comic book form. So in other words, if somebody created a comic to sell something, like the numerous Hostess fruit pie and cake ads, or ads like this for a Saturday morning cartoon lineup. I don't know. I just think that's fun, I guess. Another issue of House of Secrets. I'm surprised I don't have more of those. Anyway, next up we have one of the Max issues of Howard the Duck. Steve Gerber brought it back, only he's not a duck, he's a mouse, which I guess is kind of a commentary on Disney, maybe. Anyway, pretty nice to see Gerber back in business in this book. I don't know, it has a lot of appearances I see by other comics figures. I should really dig up the rest of this. I know I've got the omnibus of Howard the Duck up there, but I don't think it includes this Max series. I'll have to check that out. And as I say, I've got the omnibus of Howard the Duck up there, so I don't have any other single issues of the old run, which means next up is Da Hulk. I got a pretty beat up copy of 106, 108, 109. Not the most, shall we say, interesting era of the book, but hey, we got inks by Severin over Herb Trimp. Like, it's not bad, it's just a little while after this is when we get into, the Harlan Ellison is writing the Hulk, and the Wolverine is introduced in the Hulk, and then Hulk kind of dips again for a little while, and then Peter David is on the Hulk, and then things really get cooking again. These issues, oh yeah, of course, I've also got some from when the Hulk was Marvel's TV sensation, so there was a certain amount of catering to that, I suppose. The latest issue that I have is number 270, and I'm not sure why I have that. And this is, we're still working our way through the H's. And this is the first 6 issues, not that there were that many more issues, of The Human Fly, the wildest superhero ever, because he's real. Now, you may recall me mentioning The Human Fly back when I was talking about Dazzler, because in the late 70s, Marvel had this... they were making these efforts to create characters that could be used in different situations, um, different entertainment situations. So theme parks, stage shows, touring live shows, what have you. Um, and the Human Fly was one of them. Dazzler was another one, kind of with the music industry. I suppose the Human Fly was a response to stuff that was popular at the time, like Evil Knievel, kind of daredevil stunt shows. Um, I was a kid then, it was a thing. Anyway, I remember being fascinated by the Human Fly as a kid just because of the costume design and just trying to parse, well, he's a real guy, but he's teaming up with the Ghost Rider, who I believe is also a stunt guy in Marvel mythology. Um, anyway, yeah, I think there were maybe about a dozen issues of the Human Fly, and uh, there was only so far they could run with that, I suppose. Um, and it looks like this is the end of the H's, but it's a real good one to end on. One of the better uh, kind of superhero themed series of the decade so far. It's Tom King and Greg Smallwood's The Human Target. How to explain the human target? As the name implies, he is a professional decoy um, who I forget. I'm afraid I don't really know the mythology of the human target. I think he's. I don't think he's really super powered. I think he's kind of like the human fly. He's like, just like a stunt guy who got into this business of being able to double for anyone. And that, of course, gets you into all kinds of crazy Mission Impossible style intrigue. Now, in this series, it's basically a mystery investigation about one of the Justice League getting killed. Um, and I don't want to give away any more than that. If you like film noir, and if you fondly remember the Justice League International series, I mean, you don't need me to sell you on one of the great books of the decade. So I'll just leave it at that. I am going to put it up there on the shelf along with Helen of Windhorn. As I mentioned earlier, I'm trying to keep all the various Tom King books together. He writes a lot of stuff. I don't even have his Batman books. Like, I'm sure I'll read them eventually, but okay, next up we're into the eyes now. And the first thing is a coverless book called The Illustrated Story of the Jungle. No idea why I have this. Just like the look of the art, I suppose. There is some pretty cool animal art. Oh, yeah, there's actually some pretty nice art back here. I wonder who did this. I'll have to look it up. And then I've got the first issue of an image. It's like a sampler, I guess, called Image! Exclamation point. Whatever. I've got a reprint of The Invaders #1 by Roy Thomas and Frank Robbins. Robbins is he's a real unusual style for an artist these days. He's very I don't know. There's a very kind of pre-Mignola touch, I think, to the way he inks. It's very... Oh, you know what it reminds me of, actually, is Terry and the Pirates. And, I mean, it makes sense. Terry and the Pirates influenced everybody. But you know what I mean, that kind of Milt Caniff, very painterly uh, brush ink style. Anyway, I have a bunch of issues of The Invaders. It's just one of those books that I always pick up, but I don't actually have a complete collection of. Looks like I've got a run from like issue 19 to 23. And then I've got issue 30 without a cover. They're fighting a Nazi flying saucer, as you do. And then in the issue after that, they're fighting a Nazi Frankenstein. So I guess maybe we're running out of ideas a little bit, but towards the end of The Invaders. Oof. Okay, yeah. This issue had a guest writer, Don Glut, who wrote a lot of science fiction kind of tie-in novels, and he was in and out of comics, I think. And Chick Stone was the artist. Bill Black, inker. Don't know if I know that inker. Not sure what was happening to the creative team of The Invaders as the book went on. Frank Springer was an artist. Frank Robbins. Yeah, anyway. So there's that run of The Invaders, and then I also have, there's a more contemporary run from a few years ago that was actually written by Chip Starsky, with art by the recently late Butch Guice. Very sad to see him pass, one of the great Micronauts artists as well. I've only got half of these in individual issues. The other half I've got in a trade over there somewhere. Next up is a series by G. Willow Wilson and Christian Ward called Invisible Kingdom. Fantasy series, playing to Ward's strengths, of course. Has also kind of a religious theme. It's pretty interesting. Okay, I'm going to need to shuffle some stuff around here. All right, we're back at it with Iron Cat, the first issue of a series by local guy Jed MacKay. Oops. And Perry Perez on the art. And I gather it's something to do with giving the Black Cat an Iron Man suit? Sure. Why not? Okay, I'm just going to grab a stack here. There. All right, well, speaking of Gil Kane, here he is doing the cover of Iron Man 53. Did he do the interiors? He did not. George Tuska did the interiors. Well, that's all right. Ooh, Vince Coletta on the inks. This looks okay. Not something you ever want to see. Yeah. Kelly Thompson is beloved for a number of reasons, one of which I think is this character, Jeff, the shark. And this is a one-shot about Jeff. Relatively recent, with art by fan favorite Gurihiru. My apologies. We have a single coverless issue of Iron Fist, number 12, 1977, written by Chris Claremont, art by John Byrne, inked by Dan Adkins. And I'm guessing I kept it entirely for that art team. Iron Fists. And here we have a favorite old issue of Iron Man, number 69. Just always loved this cover. I remember having this when I was young. Again, George Tuska art, written by Mike Friedrich. And here's a few issues of, looks like the original run of Jonah Hex and Weird Western Tales, which was where he got his start. They spun him off into his own book after that. Looks like I've got about 6 or 8 issues of Jonah Hex Classic. And I also have another one of those DC Looney Tunes mashups that they did. This one that was done with Jimmy Palmiotti, mashing up Jonah Hex and Yosemite Sam. Why not? Let's see. Next up is an issue of the Justice League, number 138. Sharp cover there by Neil Adams. Kind of a portent of things to come much later on. Of course, the Tom King Strange Adventures series about Adam Strange and whether or not he could be trusted by the heroes of Earth. Here's another Justice League a few issues later. Number 140, a giant issue with, looks like Manhunters. Oh, it's written by Steve Englehart. It's cool. Then I've got, looks like a few issues of JLA Classified. That was the, it started, I guess, written by Grant Morrison and then moved to Gail Simone with art by Garcia Lopez, which is certainly a great thing to recommend it. I've got one issue of Commandy, The Last Boy on Earth. I have also an omnibus of half the Kirby run over there. This appears to be, this is definitely a post-Kirby issue. It's issue number 58. And what DC would do sometimes, they did this a few times with Kirby titles. He would end his run on, say, Mr. Miracle at issue number 17, and then DC would pick it up a couple years later and say, hey, here's Mr. Miracle number 18, and it would have a whole new creative team, and they didn't really reboot the numbering the way that we do now, or tend to now. So anyway, this issue of Commandy was a crossover with the Karate Kid from the Legion of Superheroes. I'm not sure how contemporaneous those characters are, because Commandy also takes place in the future. Commandy's the inspiration for Adventure Time, by the way, if you weren't aware. Anyway, so there's these 2 issues, Commandy and Karate Kid, right next to each other alphabetically, coincidentally, in my collection. And they are crossovers. Weird stuff. Here's some more weird stuff in a good way. A short series by Chip Zdarsky and Kagan McLeod, a great illustrator up in Toronto, called Kaptara. First issue is signed by both of them as well. I believe I got them to do that at TCAF one year. Fun book. It's kind of it's kind of like John Carter premise, but well, you'd have to read it. It's fun. Next up, we're into the K's here. I've got what looks like most of the first year or so of the Vertigo title Kid Eternity, which was by Anna Senti and Sean Phillips in predating his many collaborations with Brubaker. I seem to have 2 issues of #1 for some reason. Whatever. Let's see, another DC first issue. Oh, it's not a first issue. It's issue 2 of 6. A title called The Last One by J.M. DeMatteis and Dan Sweetman. Next up, we have another book by Len Wein and Garcia Lopez, and Dave Gibbons, called Legacies. I have 1 issue out of the 10, apparently. Looks to me like Teen Titans, but what do I know? And then I've got a French issue of Legion of Superheroes, #1. Well, #1 of the French run, by E. Nelson Bridwell and Paul Kupperberg. Art by Frank Chiaramonte, and Jim Janes. 1980 they did this. Oh dear. Gotta watch out for those foreign reprints. Yeah, not too great. Anyway, I also have an issue of Legion with, wow, what a combination of artists here. You got Steve Lightley on the cover. Garcia Lopez, Keith Giffen. Yeah. A crazy issue of Legion there. And I've got a few issues of, looks like about a dozen issues actually, of Marge's Little Lulu. Classic cartooning for all ages. Brilliant stuff. And then back to Tom King. He is in here a lot, and I'll probably move these up to the shelf along with the other stuff. Series called Love Everlasting. There's another issue. Lovely. Written by Tom King. Art by Elsa Charretier. Charretier? I'm sorry. Anyway, fun book about a woman who is trying to get out of an abusive relationship that is dressed up as a kind of rom-com, and every issue she either kills or escapes her way out of the relationship, only to come to in another one. Hence the everlasting, love everlasting. And she's trying to figure out, like, how do I get free of this? Kooky book. But good. Really good. Okay, another stack. This is one of those cool Marvel miniseries I referred to earlier. Machine Man by, I think it was all by, Herb Trimp did breakdowns on this. Crazy. Barry Windsor Smith. Oh, and Tom DeFalco wrote it. I wasn't sure if Windsor Smith wrote it. So I guess it's more of a standard Marvel Comics effort. What makes it special, really, is the Barry Windsor Smith. As you can see, he really sets the tone with these progressive covers of X-51 being built and ready for action there. Good series. It's been recollected a few times, I think, and certainly inspired some additional follow-ups in the Marvel Universe. Next up, we got a few issues of Magnus, Robot Fighter, 4000 AD. And of course, the big attraction to this title was always that it's early artwork for John Byrne, I believe. Although they also had some other, I think there may have been some other interesting artists who worked on it as well. Anyway, always worth having a few Robot Fighter comics around. Next up, we got Adventure into Fear with the Man-Thing and Giant Size Man-Thing. The best comic title ever? Giant Size Man-Thing? Come on. Adventure into Fear was one of Marvel's horror titles, and the Man-Thing kind of became a popular enough feature that it got spun off into his own book for a while. Also remarkable for the fact that it's by the writer Steve Gerber, creator of Howard the Duck, who spins out of the Man-Thing. In fact, he may spin out of... It might even be this issue that I'm looking at. No. Anyway, doesn't matter. Next up, we have a title called Marvel. And this was a series organized by Alex Ross, and I think maybe written by Ross, with a whole bunch of guest artists, including and writers, including Kurt Busiek, Greg Smallwood, Steve Darnell, Bill Sienkiewicz, Steve Rude. So, pretty good stuff there. And next up, of course, we're into the M's now, and I'm going to be basically going through a bunch of comics that start with the word Marvel. So, Marvel Tales, Marvel Age, Marvel this, Marvel that. We got Marvel Age number 1000, which is another one of those big, let's get a bunch of great artists together to do some stuff. We got Michael and Laura Allred, Jason Aaron, Armando Iannucci, the TV writer, Adam Kubert, Steve McNiven, local guy, Marguerite Sauvage, cool, Dan Slott, Ryan Stegman, J. Michael Straczynski, and Mark Waid, among others. And then a similar deal here with Marvel Comics number 1000 and 1001. A whole bunch of creators that I won't go into. And here in the next stack, actually this will be the last stack, we have some more Marvel titles. Marvel Feature, teaming up the Thing and the Hulk. Marvel's Greatest Comics was a Fantastic Four reprint title. Marvel Legacy was an event comic, bringing a bunch of characters back, I believe. Marvel Premiere was kind of a new character launch comic, here, or old character, as the case may be. Here is an issue of Marvel Premiere featuring 3D Man. Classic. And here's one with Dave Cockrum's take on Star Trek, kind of, Seeker 3000. And then we go into Marvel Spotlight, a couple issues of The Son of Satan, which you can watch on TV. Hellstrom on Disney Plus. And an issue of Marvel Super Action, reintroducing Marvel Boy, and another one of the Avengers. Marvel Tales was the Spider-Man reprint title, and there's a couple of them here. One with the Green Goblin, pretty intense issue there. And then finally, an issue of Marvel Voices, a relatively recent anthology title focusing on indigenous characters. So that's cool. Okay, next up we have a few issues of Master of Kung Fu, which, you know, for someone as into martial arts as I've been over the years, and as much I've been into comics over the years, I've never really read through all of the classic Shang-Chi stuff. And I should, because there's some great artists who worked on this, including Gil Kane. Here's a cover by Dan Day, or maybe it's Gene Day on this one. Not really sure. Gene Day, yep. So, yeah. So next up we have, I don't know what this title is. I kept the art because it looks awfully like Alex Toth. Some kind of Western comic. I'll look it up. We've got a few issues of a DC Army title called Men of War. Got Kubert on the covers. Dick Ayers, interior art on the first issue I've got here. Yeah, Dick Ayers and Romeo Tanghal. Roger Mackenzie, writer. Yeah, so different writers. Looks like Dick Ayers and Romeo Tanghal were the artists, at least on all the issues I've got here. Issues 6, 9, and 23. Looks like there was an ongoing feature. Oh, I see. So they had an ongoing feature called Codename Gravedigger. And then they would swap in other stuff like Enemy Ace, I guess. And something called Dateline Frontline, which was about a reporter on the front lines. So a military / army themed book from the 70s and 80s that basically wasn't the old title, Our Army at War, the Sergeant Rock title, which kind of came and went over the years. I'm ashamed to say I only have one issue of The Metal Men by Walter Simonson and Martin Pascoe. One of many issues that I enjoyed when I was a kid. Definitely have to try and get some of those back into the collection. Next up is a big one. It's basically all the issues of Miracle Man, aka Marvel Man, depending on how old you are and where you're from. Miracle Man, Marvel Man, was the British version of Captain Marvel, aka Shazam, and hence part of the problem. There have been legal issues over the name Captain Marvel since the 1960s. The last thing in the box is actually a short series by Mike Mignola and Jesse Lonergan, great artist, called Ms. Truesdale and the Fall of Hyperborea, which I understand is a spin-off or from the world of Hellboy. There's a lot of Hellboy stuff that I have not had a chance to read, um, but if it's drawn by Jesse Lonergan, I'm going to check it out. So, speaking of which, I picked up his new graphic novel up there. It's called Drome. Looking forward to reading that. So, hope you enjoyed shelf reading number 2. I'm going to edit this up and post it. I will do another one maybe on next Monday, since it is my day off. It seems like a logical time to do it. So I'll see you then, and have a great day. Read more comics.